Çeviköz. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Okay, who will present a Turkish perspective. Ambassador Çeviköz was born in Istanbul in 1952. He has BA degrees in English literature and political science from the Bogazici University in Istanbul, and an MA degree in international relations from Brussels University. Mr. Çeviköz joined the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in 1978 and served in various posts in the ministry as well as abroad. In 1989, he was seconded to NATO's International Secretariat, and in 1994, he was commissioned with launching a NATO information office in Moscow. Following this, he prepared the NATO-Russia Founding Act, and in 1997 returned to his duty at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Ankara in Turkey. He served as Turkey's ambassador in Azerbaijan from 2001 to 2004, and from 2004 to 2006 in Iraq. From 2007 to 2010, he was back in Ankara as Deputy Undersecretary for Bilateral Political Affairs at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. In 2009, he prepared the protocol signed between Turkey and Armenia, and in 2010 he was appointed ambassador to London. After completing his duty in 2014, he retired from government service. He has been elected as the president of the 28th General Assembly of the International Maritime Organization and has held this position between 2003 and 2015. He's also been the president of the Ankara Policy Center, 2014 to 2018, a columnist in Radikal, in Hürriyet and Hürriyet Daily News. He is a member of several think tanks. Currently, he is the deputy chairperson of CHP, which is the Republican People's Party, responsible for foreign relations, and a member of the Turkish Grand National Assembly. Ambassador.
Well, Chairman, thank you very much. When you are invited to international conferences like these, you are also requested to send a biography, and you never expect that biography is going to be read in front of the audience. So that actually has consumed a part of my time for the presentation.
It's your fault.
The first thing that I want to mention is, as we are now discussing in a panel which is titled like the new threats or the threats to Mediterranean security, and as I am requested to give a Turkish perspective, I want to underline that this is a Turkish perspective. It is not the Turkish perspective. That means I'm not representing the official view. And it is also clear from my biography that I am now in the opposition, and I am also representing the opposition party. So that is a kind of an alternative perspective from Turkey's point of view about the threats that we perceive in the Eastern Mediterranean. Is it possible to have the Syrian map on the screen, which is very helpful? Because I am also going to talk about the challenges and the threats to the Mediterranean security. And when, of course, a Turkish perspective is expected, you can never leave Syria aside. And since the morning today, everybody mentioned Syria a couple of times. So from a Turkish perspective, Syria apparently is the most important security challenge to the Eastern Mediterranean. If you can have the map, I will probably expand on that so that you can easily understand why Turkey considers Syria as an important security challenge. First of all, it is a quagmire that has been going on for almost 8 years now, and it is unresolved, although Jonathan has mentioned that it is winding down in both of its aspects, both domestically and as far as the ISIS is concerned. But it is going to be on the agenda of Turkey for a couple of reasons. First of all, the refugee problem. Professor Keridis has mentioned it very eloquently. The refugee problem is still going to keep Syria as a major challenge to the Eastern Mediterranean security. because you are not able to resolve this refugee problem simply by winding down the domestic dispute and by eradicating ISIS from the Syrian territory. The refugee issue is bound to be there, and particularly because there are different areas of control, as Jonathan has mentioned, where there are still some Islamist jihadist organizations who have the potential to disbalance the equilibrium which is being created. And in the final analysis, if we think that we can overcome the difficulty of Idlib area, which is the green area that has been shown by Jonathan there, where are those radical elements go? Where are they going to go? If they leave the country and if they go into Turkey, that is of course going to become a very serious security problem for Turkey. And if they go through Turkey to other countries, then it will pose a major security problem for other countries, particularly for the European countries. So Syrian issue remains a #1 priority as far as the Eastern Mediterranean security is concerned. Now, another dimension of the Syrian quagmire is, as you see, the green areas and the yellow areas are all along the Turkish border. And that is certainly a major national security issue for Turkey. The two operations which took place, the Euphrates Shield and the Olive Branch operations, have only secured the light green areas, which are relatively under the control of Turkey, but this has not finished the challenges emanating from the Syrian territory into Turkey, and particularly in the yellow area, as Jonathan also mentioned, that the YPG and PYD are considered to be an extension of the PKK terrorist organization by Turkey officially, then this means that there is also a challenge to the border zone of Turkey along the Syrian border. So these are the issues why Turkey considers Syria as a major security issue in the Eastern Mediterranean. With all due respect to the presence of my Greek colleagues and my Cypriot colleagues, the second issue, unfortunately, is Cyprus. Why is Cyprus a major security issue in the Eastern Mediterranean? The very fact that it has been explained again in the morning by Professor Keridis, that it involves a lot of energy issues, and this equation simply isolates and leaves Turkey outside of the equation, is a major issue in the Eastern Mediterranean. But the Cyprus issue is not a major problem from Turkey's point of view. It is a problem from the whole Eastern Mediterranean and the whole Euro-Atlantic community. It is no doubt that Turkey is moving towards a very authoritarian system. And as this transformation is taking place, nationalism and all those national emotional feelings which are based on instrumentalizing foreign policy issues for domestic purposes becomes a major element in the Turkish domestic politics currently. And an unresolved Cyprus problem, unfortunately, creates a potential challenge to the Eastern Mediterranean security because it can easily be instrumentalized and transformed into an issue to create some disbalance in the region. That is my explanation why Cyprus is a major issue and major threat to the Eastern Mediterranean security. Otherwise, I'm not talking about the unresolved situation of Cyprus per se. I'm not talking about how it is going to be resolved. This is a separate discussion, and it can certainly take hours and hours between the three Greeks, Cypriots, and Turks. But the issue here is the Cyprus problem can be manipulated, and that is the danger why it has become an issue from my point of view as far as the Eastern Mediterranean security is concerned. The third issue that I would like to mention is the presence of outside powers in the region. General Golan has mentioned the importance of presence of United States and Russia, but as a former NATO-crat, I attribute great importance to NATO-Russia relations, not simply because I am the writer of the Founding Act itself, but also because I consider the global balance to be kept intact, and I consider the balance between the West and Russia as a very important issue of the overall global security. And when we talk in terms of global security, Eastern Mediterranean also has a role to disbalance this global security. The presence of Russia and the United States or other outside factors in the Eastern Mediterranean carries the global issues into a narrower theater. The presence of Russia and the United States does not help the resolution of the problems of the Eastern Mediterranean. To the contrary, it is going to be used as a kind of a proxy war or a proxy challenge situation in this narrow theater for global security purposes. The presence of Russia and the United States may help only if there is a global understanding and only if Russia does not assert itself in the Eastern Mediterranean to disbalance this global, security equation. So my understanding is, as long as Russia and the United States have different opinions about the global security, and as long as they cannot reach an understanding in the global security system, their presence together in an area like the Eastern Mediterranean will create much more difficulties for the Eastern Mediterranean. And in fact, I think the problems of the region itself have to be resolved by the actors in the region themselves. There should be some kind of an initiative coming from within the region. It should not be imposed from without. And as long as Russia and the United States look into the region from their own security interests and their own egocentric approaches, I think there will never be a possibility to find an appropriate solution to the problems of the Eastern Mediterranean. The fourth issue that I want to mention is the presence of non-state actors. Unfortunately, the 21st century has been unable to deal with the non-state actors. It is very easy to blame these non-state actors as terrorists, but each and every country has its own definition of terrorism, and each and every non-state actor becomes a terrorist for another country. For example, Hamas is considered as a terrorist organization. PKK is considered as a terrorist organization. Turkey perceives PYD-YPG as the extension of PKK terrorist organization, and certainly questions why the United States, an ally within NATO organization, an ally for more than 60 years, is cooperating with PYD-YPG in Syria. So these are the questions that we have to tackle. We cannot find a solution to deal with the non-state actors in the region. And as long as we fail to find a good, appropriate way to handle the non-state actors and their presence, because they make an impact on the policy and the politics of the region, I think this also continues to become a very important security challenge for the region. And the fifth, and this is the last element that I want to mention, is the lack of communication and lack of dialogue between actors in the region. Turkey is to be blamed. Professor Golan said that Turkey is a problem. As I was leaving the hotel in the morning, I looked at the mirror and I saw my image. It was not problematic to me myself, but I hope I will simply explain why Turkey should not be seen as a problem. I would probably put the question or the statement that you had, General, in a different context, not as a problem or a solution, but as an asset or a liability. Turkey, unfortunately, with the transformation that is going through, is becoming a liability. But it had to be an asset, and it was an asset. It is now important how to bring Turkey back into action and into the equation as an asset, and instead of keeping it isolated and leaving it as a liability. How are we going to do that? I think, of course, Turkey has to do a lot of homework there, and Turkey has to change a lot of approaches in the region. First of all, as a former diplomat, I unfortunately very much regret that there is no Turkish ambassador in Israel currently. And unfortunately, there is no Turkish ambassador in Egypt. These two countries, Egypt and Israel, are the most important actors in the Eastern Mediterranean. And if Turkey does not have a very good high-level diplomatic communication and diplomatic dialogue with these countries, then unfortunately that results with some kind of a lack of communication, and that doesn't help to build appropriate relations and good contribution to the solutions of the problem. So what is the option? Of course, I mean, as an opposition parliamentarian, it is very easy for me to put several ideas forth, but I will simply conclude, which will probably be the topic of the afternoon panels. I will simply put forth an idea or a question, and maybe it is time to tackle with this question in the Middle East. Is a Middle Eastern Westphalia possible? That is a very important question, because if we try to address this Middle Eastern Westphalia question, then probably we will overcome most of the difficulties and the challenges that we are discussing today. My party's point of view is, because there are several ideas which are floating, for example, the Gulf Cooperation Council, an enhanced Gulf Cooperation Council with the participation of Egypt and Jordan, is expected, how it is described as President Trump, as a new Middle Eastern NATO, I believe is not the solution. Let me simply make my statement here. A kind of a NATO-like organization in the Middle East is simply a collective defense organization. What the Middle East needs is a collective security organization. So we should be looking for the possibility of creating a new Westphalia in the Middle East, and if an organization is needed, we should probably try to apply the model of the Organization of Security and Cooperation in Europe. Because a collective defense organization in the region, which brings together a couple of Arab countries, which excludes Israel, and again, in a community and in an audience like that, please excuse my daring statement, if it also excludes Iran, then unfortunately we will not be able to reach a good solution of the problems in the region. I think isolation of the possible potential actors who may have a role to play in the future security architecture of a region should never be excluded. That certainly includes Turkey, but it should also, in a way, include Iran. I understand the explanation that we heard about Iran. Iran has serious challenges to the Israeli security, but not only to Israel, but to the whole Eastern Mediterranean. But it is probably also a matter of lack of communication, which has to be established. And if we can improve the direct channels of communication with Iran, I see Ephraim laughing at me, but yes, but we can find ways to talk or to include Iran. Iran needs to be respected, and Iran needs to be understood and counted as an important actor in the region. If we respect their expectations, probably we can find a solution, because this is the same that we have done as a mistake after the dissolution of the Soviet Union. Russia also wanted to be respected and understood as a member of the global international security architecture, but when we failed to accept them, we have seen that the situation in Georgia and Ukraine created a very serious challenge. And that is how I approach to the international relations. That is how my party approaches to international relations, and that is the reason why I underline the importance of dialogue, communication, and involvement of all the potential possible actors in the equation so that they can contribute to the solution of the problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Fascinating, food for thought. Later questions. Let's just push on, okay? I